I hear music, mighty fine music, the murmur of the morning breeze out there, the rattle of the milkman on the stairs. Sure, that's music, mighty fine music, the singing of the sparrows in the sky, the working of the coffee, right by. There's my favorite melody, you're my angel falling. I hear music, mighty fine music, and anytime I think my world is wrong, get me out of bed and sing the song.
I hear the music. Mighty fine music. I hear the music.
Forget your troubles, come on, get out to the music.
I hear the music.
Hey, it's gonna be a great day.
Mighty fine music.
Get out of bed, you sleepyhead, rise up and sing. Sing so the whole world will know that you hear the music, mighty, mighty fine music. The murmur of the morning breeze out there, the rattle of the milkman on the stage. Sure, that's music, mighty fine music. The singing of the sparrows in the sky, the perking of the coffee, ready right there. That's my favorite melody.
2, 3, 4.
5'2", eyes of blue. Oh, what those 5 feet can do. Wait, I'll get it.
You're my angel, phoning me. Now I hear the music, mighty, mighty fine music. And anytime I think my world is wrong, I get me out of bed and sing this song. I hear the music. I let a song go out of my heart.
Well, hi, this is David Cummings, and this is Rockin In Rhythm here on Fresh Air Community Radio, a special program this afternoon. We just kicked it off with the Phil Mattson Singers with I Hear Music, and we've got a couple of great special guests in the studio today. Mr. Mattson is here, Sheridan Zuther, a very talented young singer, and our friend Les Block. Mr. Block?
Good
welcome.
To be back.
Welcome,
David.
Everybody.
Good to be back.
Thank you, David.
I'm sitting here with Phil Mattson, the brilliant pianist, arranger, vocal group leader, and educator. And he's here with us today, live in the studios of KFAI. And on my left is the beautiful and talented Sheridan Zuther.
Yes.
He only says this because
How
we're
come
on
you
the radio.
didn't say beautiful about me, Les?
Well, you're beautiful too, but in a different kind of way.
Oh,
She's got those beautiful big blue eyes.
I know it. Yeah.
And she is a singer, a vocal singer, and this show today is devoted to vocal singing groups, and especially Mr. Mattson's. And that's what we're going to be spending the next couple of hours doing. So what we're going to do now is start off with a Phil Mattson chart on a song that doesn't get its just due. And here we go. And
I think we were talking about that a little earlier, or the other day, about this is a little bit nicer than I've heard this song done before. So.
Well, it's not just that. It's a great song written in 1912. It's called My Melancholy Baby. And it's one of those things that people make fun of, and especially other musicians and people who get a little inebriated who are always asking. It used to happen to me when I was playing piano at various piano bars. Somebody come over, whether they were drunk or not, to make like a drunk, and they'd say, "My melancholy baby," that kind of thing. And it turns out to be a great song, and I say written in 1912. Just think of that. It's 100 years old, almost 100 years old now. And Phil did an incredibly good arrangement on this song, and it just swings like crazy. So listen to My Melancholy Baby, Phil Mattson and his singing group. These, I think, are the PM singers.
Okay.
No fears, no fears. I'm in love with you. Come to me, my melancholy baby, baby, cuddle up. Don't you be blue. All your fears are foolish fancies, baby, now dear. I'm in love with you. All the clouds have silver linings, wait until the sun shines through. Smile, dear, kiss away each fear, else I shall be melancholy. To me, my melancholy baby, baby, come up. Don't you be blue. All your fears are foolish fancies, baby, you know, dear. I'm in love with you. All the clouds have silver linings, great. Wait until the sun shines through. Smile, dear, kiss away each tear. Or else I shall be melancholy too.
Well, it doesn't get better than that, folks. It does not get better than that. That was Richie Cole taking the solo on alto saxophone, and I just found out this minute, because I didn't realize it before, that the guy playing the drunk on this in this song
Yeah.
was Phil Mattson.
And here he is.
And here he is. Are you drunk today, sir?
I'm drunk with love and music. If that's
That'll work. That'll work.
And I was looking at the band arrangement, and there's a funny name. It's Mark Mattson. I mean, Mattson sounds like a familiar name to me. Is that possible that you might know this guy?
that's my second oldest son. Yes, he's a wonderful musician and a wonderful man.
What a chart. What a marvelous band arrangement. It was super. You know what I want to talk a little about with you is I've heard you play the piano, and you're a great piano player. And I know that you started out playing the piano, but I'm curious as to how you ended up in vocal music. I mean, how does one get from playing piano in piano bars and, you know, the kind of thing you were doing early on? And by the way, I was going to say welcome back to Minnesota, which is kind of what you're doing, but I didn't realize you were living here now. So I know you're living in Minnesota, and I also know you were born in Minnesota. You are a Minnesota native.
Yes, sir.
So-
I am. And I was born in Duluth, and I grew up in Brainerd. And my inspiration initially, vocally, was my wonderful high school choir director, Kurt Hansen, who was one of the founders, original founders of the American Choral Directors Association. He was the choir director in Brainerd at the time. And I loved singing F. Milius Christensen's music and his own arrangements. And then I went to Concordia College and studied with Paul Christensen, and I loved being in that choir. And so I thought, well, I think being a choir director would be a good thing for me. I was kind of tired of playing in bars, and certainly tired of playing in piano bars. And so...
Did people used to come over to you and say, play Melancholy Baby, by the way?
Probably somebody did, but it was, you know, that scene where you're just kind of playing background music. I wasn't an entertainer. I was a pianist. And
Well, how did you start with arranging? That's one thing to start saying, I want to be in a choir, but how did you start doing the arrangements, and where did that training come from, and how did you develop that skill and talent to do that?
When I was in high school, Kurt Hansen let me write the music for a band for a variety music show. And so I started arranging for instruments then. And then, when I got my first teaching job at Foothill College in California, Bay Area, there was a new thing going on. Just relatively started up called vocal jazz in high schools and colleges out west. There wasn't anything out here.
What about in the East Coast? Was that something that was...
No, it wasn't anywhere but the West Coast initially. There were show choirs, but not vocal jazz. Show choirs danced and you know,
What year are we talking about now, is approximately?
from 1976 for me. And the vocal jazz in schools was started actually up in Seattle, Washington area by a fellow named Waldo King. And that was early 70s, maybe, or late 60s. So there was this movement of people who loved Lambert Hendrickson Ross and the Four Freshmen. The high-lows, as wonderful as they are, were not the primary models. The primary models were the Four Freshmen. I met all these guys who started this vocal jazz movement, but it turns out there weren't very many published arrangements yet. So the very first year I was teaching there, I decided I would try to write some arrangements. So I did 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that, and it turned out that I enjoyed doing it, and people enjoyed performing them, and they started getting published. So
Where were you teaching at the time? What school were you at in
that was
Washington?
Foothill College in Los Altos.
Oh, that's California, isn't it?
Yeah, California. That was my first teaching.
So you said, did you go to Washington before that? Because I know you spent some time in Washington State.
No, my second year of teaching, I was invited to come up to Seattle and work in a summer vocal jazz camp that was run by Frank DeMero, who was one of the famous originators of vocal jazz. So that summer I met everybody who was doing vocal jazz up in the Northwest at that camp at Edmonds Community College in north of Seattle. And so I got in the club right away. And yeah.
What's amazing to me is how many vocal jazz choirs there groups there are around this country at universities and at high schools. I didn't realize that this is something that you don't hear that much about. The public really doesn't know that much about those choruses or choirs. But as you hear about the bands, I think there's a lot more knowing on the part of the public about the fact that there are a lot of bands, but not so much the vocal choruses.
The big bands, you mean at colleges? Yeah, that was much more developed. And much earlier, of course, late 40s they started doing that. And they had access to all of the professional arrangements that were out there. And, vocal jazz is a teeny little pebble in the ocean of music. And even though there are a lot of people who do like it, it's not something that gets a lot of publicity necessarily, except Manhattan Transfer and people.
I know a lot of
like
high
that.
schools have jazz vocal groups.
Oh, yes.
And some of them are darn good, because I've been watching YouTube, and some of those kids are marvelous. I couldn't believe how good some of those high school kids were.
They are, and there's been these summer jazz workshops. I did them for 33 summers, and so high school choir directors would come to these, and high school singers, and they would come and learn, and gradually, but it takes a more competent musician to direct a vocal jazz group than it does to direct a choir or a show choir. Both of those things, to do it really well, obviously you have to be competent, but you can be somewhat minimally competent and do your choir. Obviously everybody's doing it out there. Not everybody's a genius who's a high school choir director. And the show choir is relatively easy because it's mostly unison singing, and dancing, and some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not as complex musically. That's all.
Well, to give you an idea about the complexity, give the audience an idea about the complexity of what you're talking about now, we're going to do another chart from that, or another Phil Mattson's arrangements from that same album, of a song that I absolutely adore called Stella by Starlight. I always wondered. I remember somebody came up to me once when I was playing a piano gig, and they said, and I just had finished playing Stella by Starlight, and somebody said, well, why would anybody name a song Stella? You know, why would somebody use that name Stella in it? And I said, I have no idea. It's not a very musical sounding name, and the alliteration of Stella by Starlight may be the reason. But I found out eventually that, or a little later, I looked it up, and they found it was the theme song of a movie called, what was the name of that?
The Uninvited.
The Uninvited. I think Ray Milland was in that. And it was the theme song played throughout the...
Was that Victor Young? Did he write that song?
Yes, Victor Young wrote the song, and Ned Washington wrote the lyric. But the reason they named it Stella by Starlight is because the main female character in the movie is Stella. And there are lines in it where somebody said, I'm going to play you the theme I wrote for you, Stella. So when Ned Washington got the thing, he said, I had to call it Stella. That's where that came from. So let's play a little Stella by Starlight.
Stella by Starlight.
The song the robin sings through years of endless spring. At eventide that nestles in the nook where two lovers hide a great symphony theme.
That's Stella by Starlight, and not a dream.
My heart and I, we both agree that she's everything on earth to me.
I hear the song that the robin sings through years of endless spring. The nestles back where two lovers hide a great symphonic theme. That's Stella, and not a dream. My heart and I, we both agree that she's everything. She's everything. Makes my heart sing. Makes my heart sing.
another Mark Mattson arrangement, I think. Is that correct? And then,
Yes.
of course, another Richie Cole solo.
Richie Cole solo.
And, of course, your arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
You mentioned how difficult it is. Sheridan and I are listening to this thing and saying, "Oh, wow!" And it's how difficult it must be to sing for those things. It's one thing to play an instrument, where you've got a mechanical thing to work with. It's another thing to have to use your voice, and do lyrics and hit the pitches with that. There's nothing as vulnerable, I think, as a voice, as a human voice in music. It's got to be so hard to do that.
Well, it is a little difficult, but once if a person has a good ear, good pitch memory, and learns to listen as well as sing, it gets easier and easier. And so finally, there's really nothing you can't write for them. And
lots of practice.
well, initially, yes.
Together, yeah.
yeah.
But once you get to know each other,
Yeah.
in that group, I think it becomes a lot easier because you know each other's strengths and weaknesses too, and you can take over for each other.
Exactly.
But,
Exactly.
it is a lot of listening. It's a different approach, definitely from solo singing.
Mm-hmm. It's
about-
it's almost as if you were an instrument
Yes.
in that kind of
Right.
not the whole arrangement, but that middle section where it was a cappella. It's written basically as it were instruments.
I just want to let everybody know who we are here today. This is Mr. Phil Mattson in the studio today, Mr. Les Block, Sheridan Zuther, and we're talking about this great vocal jazz music that Phil Mattson has arranged and is responsible for so much of this stuff. And we're going to be hearing from
it's
Sheridan and
Touch so
your
many
group.
lives
Yeah.
like mine. Yeah.
Well, what we're going to do now is play another Phil Mattson. This is not an arrangement of his. It's an arrangement by Michelle Weir, one of his stellar students who adores him. I spoke to her before this radio show, and I would say unfortunately, but she's at a summer camp in the middle of the redwood trees and couldn't call in. She wanted to call in and talk to Phil a little, and we won't be able to do that. But we're going to play her arrangement of C'est Bon. And then, but prior to that, we're going to play the original recording of C'est Bon, which was done by Eartha Kitt, who Orson Welles called the most exciting woman in the world when he met her in France. And she's an amazing performer. I saw her when she came through Minnesota maybe 10 or so years ago, and she was a phenomenal cabaret performer and a phenomenal actress performer, and looked incredibly good. She was about 80 maybe at the time, and she had the greatest legs you've almost could ever seen.
Les,
She
Les.
did yoga
Jeez.
every day and worked out. I mean, she was in incredible
Les, you
shape.
would notice that.
Well, she was wearing a short, she was wearing a skirt that she wanted everybody to see her great legs, and she even showed it to.
She is beautiful.
She was absolutely beautiful. So here is Miss Eartha Kitt with C'est Bon, and I love this recording when it was made. It was a big hit. It was a #1 hit, and here
Here's
it
Eartha
is.
Kitt.
C'est si bon de partir n'importe où, bras dessus, bras dessous, en chantant des chansons. C'est si bon de se dire des mots doux, de petits rien du tout, mais qui en disent en langue, en voyant notre mine ravie. Les passants dans la rue nous envient. C'est si bon de gaieté dans ses yeux, une esprit merveilleux qui donnait le frisson. C'est si bon, ces petites sensations, ça vaut mieux que millions. C'est tellement, tellement bon. C'est bon. Voilà, c'est bon. Les passants dans la rue, bras dessous, en chantant des chansons. Quel esprit merveilleux. c'est bon. Je cherche un millionnaire avec des grands Cadillac cars, mink coats, des bijoux jusqu'au cou, tu sais. C'est bon. Ces petites sensations. Peut-être quelqu'un avec un petit yacht, non? Ah, c'est bon. C'est bon, c'est bon. Vous savez bien que j'attends quelqu'un qui pourrait m'apporter beaucoup de loot. Ce soir, demain, la semaine prochaine. N'importe quand. C'est bon. Si bon. Il sera très crazy, non? Voilà, c'était tellement bon.
Lovers say that in France, when they thrill to romance, it means that it's sexy love. So I say it to you, like the French people do. It means it's so good. Every word, every sigh, every kiss leads to only one thought, and it's tasty. Sexy ball. Nothing else can replace just your slightest embrace. And if you only would be my own for the rest of my days, I will whisper this phrase. Sexy ball. Tous les mots et soupir desséchés versent mon dire une pensée, et c'est son nothing else can replace just your slightest embrace. And if you only would be my own for the rest of my days, darling, oh my darling, Cecil Ball.
Isn't that a wonderful arrangement, Michelle?
Michelle, what a great arrangement.
Yeah, and in the studio it was fun. We recorded this in Los Angeles, the band charts that my son had written. This was first take, the very first take, and Clay Jenkins played this marvelous trumpet solo. And
that's all you needed.
that's all we needed, one take. And he'd never played the arrangement before, and he plays everything that fits so perfectly. But the singers I'd like to just mention because they were so wonderful. Jason Smith was our bass. Joe Finetti sang the middle parts, and John Paddock, the high man, and Mary Heavey was our bottom alto, and Michelle Weir was our middle gal, sang all over the place. And then we had two different lead singers. First one was Sarah Jennison, and then the lead singer on this arrangement was Patty Fletcher. So they were just wonderful young musicians, and we learned a lot together trying to do this music.
Well, Mr. Phil Mattson, the guy who's making all that music possible.
Well, I am sitting next to Sheridan Zuther, who was not only she was a singer with a vocal group, a 5-piece vocal group. We'll be talking about that in a little while, but maybe I can get her to reveal something about Phil Mattson, because she was a student of Phil Mattson's for a while, and maybe you can tell us some secrets about this guy sitting next to me. What he was like. Was he any good as a teacher? Was he an easy guy? Did he demand a lot? Just talk a little about him as a teacher and what his contribution to the field is.
Well, I came to Phil from a little college called Minot State University, and I was at Minot for 2 years before I went on to the University of Missouri in Kansas City, and I started my opera degree. But those first 2 years, I really got into vocal jazz and listened to the Manhattan Trance for the very first time. And I remember auditioning for operator and listening to operator over and over and over the night before that audition, and I got it. And that started my love of vocal jazz and blues and all of that gospel, all of that music that I was really shown in Kansas City when I was going to school there, and got to go to the clubs and all of that. So then when I was doing my opera degree, then I started going to clubs a lot more than I started going to classes. And there the story ends, because I quit my master's in opera and moved to Minneapolis and started doing a lot of club gigs here. But that that time that we went, our vocal jazz group from Minot State University, Dr. Gary Walth was my teacher at the time, and he took us to Bismarck State College, where Phil was doing a workshop, a master class, and we were one of the groups that were there to take part of that master class. And I remember walking in, and Phil was in a wheelchair at the time. He had broken his leg, and but he still had all the spitfire and the gumption to be leading groups and leading a master class. And I don't particularly remember what songs we worked on, perhaps something like Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, something like that. But I do remember the demeanor of Phil, and I really responded well to it. And I remember going out of that session, and some of the kids were afraid of Phil. I mean, it was like, they felt a little overwhelmed with the big personality that you have. And some kids don't always fare well with that type of teaching, but I do. And honestly, Phil, I felt like you were kicking our butts all over the four corners of the room because you want to get as much out of your kids as possible, and you only have so much amount of time to work with these kids, and with me,
Yep.
and so that's what you do. And actually, that's kind of how I approach my teaching as well now too. When I go out and I teach at like next week, I'll be teaching at a music camp up in the Peace Gardens in North Dakota, where I used to go when I was a kid, and I think that kids take you more seriously. They respond to you more effectively when you have that serious side. We're here for a purpose. We're here to learn. We're here to rehearse. And there's no time for talking. There's no time for that other BS. So I want to thank you for that introduction to vocal jazz and to rehearsing. And I really responded well to that. And then Phil also touched my life when I came back to Minneapolis, and Phi by Design was looking for a alto for their group, and I auditioned for them. I was doing a show actually at the Ordway Center for the Arts, and I was doing Hot and Cole, Cole Porter review. And Phi by Design came to listen to me in that one of those performances because their alto, Kathy Farr Scott, was also a student of yours in Iowa. And she and I had gone to school at University of Missouri in Kansas City. So she had recommended me for that job. So that is another connection that I had with you. And then a few years ago, we went to your reunion concert that you had in 2009. And that's where we met Richie Cole. And Richie Cole was standing in the wings while Phi by Design was performing. And he said, as soon as we got off stage, he rushed to us and he said, "Man, I really like you cats. You cats sing so good. I really enjoy your style of singing." You know how he talks. You know, he's a jazz cat.
Yeah.
And he wanted to work with us. And so there it happens. And we premiered our first show with Richie Cole just this past March with the Topeka Symphony. And we have a symphonic version of the show as well as a big band version of the show, or actually a quartet version of the show. I mean, can you look at all that timeline from, I don't know, almost 20 years ago and to today, you know, and how much you've influenced not just me. I'm a tiny speck in a little pool of water. And how much you've influenced so many people around here. I mean, as an educator, that's the fulfillment I think we also receive when we're educators, and that's what I get anyway. But I want to say thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Sheridan. I'd forgotten all about Minot and that.
That time frame.
And I'd forgotten that you had been at Kansas City and with Kathy Farr, and I'd forgotten all that. You just forget so much.
Well, there's so many people I'm sure that you're involved with
Well,
over your
it's not that.
over the
It's just my
time.
memory is not that not that good. But some people are just thirsting for serious work,
Yes.
and that's a minority. And then the majority would just soon have you say, "Oh, that's wonderful. I love what
Yeah.
you did with that, and let's do a little bit of this." And then the clinic's over, and you haven't gotten to any improvement. All you've done is not offended anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I also had received, it was like a 3-4 page document, handout that you had. And it included some things that we should listen to, some artists that we should listen to, which I actually still have that piece of paper. And I use it now in my own teaching. And you also had some basics of improv. How to start improv. You know, me, a little farm kid from North Dakota who used to start singing in a grain silo. That's actually how I started. And that is how I started learning improv, because it was so basic. You're just basically going up and down the scale, do ba do ba do ba do ba do. I mean, just something simple as that. That's where you start, and then you grow and you flourish out from that. And I was talking with you earlier about Michelle Weir and meeting her for the first time in 2009 at your reunion concert and getting to watch her on stage. and seeing how she really mechanicalizes her improv as well. Closing her eyes, like you said, there's no gimmicks. That she's not there to impress. She is there for the musicality.
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun seeing her approach to improv. And that taught me a lot as well. I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, geez, we all should be, as musicians, should always be looking for the next step, next level.
Well, there's nothing like a former student talking about a teacher like you just heard Sheridan talk about you. I, as a former college professor, it's something very special about a student coming back and saying how much something meant to them, or seeing them in a position at some of administrative, in my case, it's just marvelous. So you should be very happy. That's lovely, Phil. It was one of the loveliest things.
It is a
somebody could
lovely
say.
thing. Thank you, Sheridan.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Sheridan, okay, you have been with you mentioned Five by Design. You're a
Yes.
singer. You were with them for about 7 years.
Yes.
You were on the road. You were what Johnny Mandel, who we interviewed for the Mercer Show, called a road rat.
Pretty much. We were on the road about 200 days out of the
Okay.
year.
And you're off the road now. You've left the road after
Well,
7 years.
Yeah, I'm still doing some contractual gigs here and there, things that are a little bit more close to home. There's some opportunities that I wanted to take advantage of here in the cities. And I bought a house about 2.5 years ago, and I don't know, it's time to maybe, not hang up the suitcase, but, maybe get off the road a little bit and have a plant or two,
But
some of those things that you
But I
take
wonder
for
if
granted.
you could tell me what it's like to be on the road. I mean, just give us a little feeling about what it's like. I mean, the big band days. I remember Tony Bennett was talking to us about doing an album with Count Basie. And he said that he had to go to this town where Basie was performing one of those one-night stands, and he finished with the gig at about midnight. And then they had from midnight to about 7 in the morning to record this album
My
because
goodness.
Basie had to get on the bus and get to the next town. And you were telling me a little about the road. I just thought of that story. So
Well, my experiences might be a little different from some other musicians because Five by Design is also the business. So we are the setup crew. We're the costumers, we're the makeups and the hair people, and we're the performers. And then after we're done with the show, we also get to tear down the show and put it all back in the truck. So
get on the truck and go to the next gig, right?
and go to the next gig, exactly. So my view of the road is, honestly, it's a lot of sitting in a van, and we tried not to go more than 600 miles a day, but we have gone up to 800 miles in a day. But that's about our average, is 600 miles a day, unless we are able to string together local gigs like we do a lot down in Florida because of snowbirds that are happening down there. And then you get to the theater. You set things up, you talk to the promoters, the presenters, and make sure that things look right in your programming, and your marketing is as you contracted it as, and as the others are setting up. That's kind of my job, is connecting with the promoters and the presenters and getting that end taken care of, and doing the show and packing it up and then going back to the hotel.
So you're a little tired after a while on the road. Is that, I get
It is. It's a little it is exhausting. But gosh, when you want to do that, and honestly, I love that life. I love that lifestyle. I've always wanted to live out of a suitcase. I've always wanted to be a gypsy, because I had mentioned before, I'm from a tiny little farm in North Dakota, and we didn't go anywhere. So now that I get to go and I see the country and Canada as well, we go up into Canada. Gosh, it really has a fulfillment of no other.
So we were going to listen to a couple of cuts from Five by Design.
Yeah, sure.
With Sheridan on. You are lead on these.
I think the ones that we're taking from are from Five by Design's third album called Stay Tuned, and that's also a show that came out while I was helping to write that show as well. They've been together for a long time, though, almost 20 years. The other four singers are family, brothers, wife, and high school colleagues. So it was a pleasure working with them, and I've learned a lot from them. So.
Well, all right. Well, from that album, it's wonderful.
Yes, the Gershwin's wonderful song, "Swonderful." And after that, it's Hey There. If we have the time to do it in
Yeah,
this.
we could. Yeah,
so
we'll just we
why don't
we
you
don't have
run
time to
those
do
and we can talk about them a little after when we come back. What do they call it when you come back after the hour? What's the radio name for that?
We'll be back after the.
Oh, we'll be back after.
Here's 5 by Design.
Don't mind telling you in my humble fash that you thrill me through with a tender pash. When you said you care, imagine my emotion. I swore then and there permanent devotion. You made all other men seem blah. Just you alone filled me with awe. Wonderful, marvelous,
Marvelous, you should care for me. Soulful night,
Soulful night,
paradise, what I love to see.
You've
Made my life so glamorous, you can't blame me for feeling amorous. Oh, it's wonderful, it's marvelous that you should care for me. It's magnifique, it's what I seek. You should care for me. Seven guns, it's what I want, it's what I love to see. My dear, it's 4-leaf clover time. From now on, my heart's working overtime. It's exceptional, it's no bagatelle that you should care for, that you should care for, that you should care for. You should care for me.
Lately, when I'm in my room, all by myself, in the solitary gloom, I call to myself. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise. Hey there, you on that high flying cloud, though going in one ear and out the other. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise. Won't you take this advice I hand you like a mother? Or are you not seeing things too clear? Are you too much in love to hear? Is it all going in one ear and out the other?
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
And Sheridan's right here.
Oh,
And we were listening to that music. That's so nice. That's
thank you.
Les Block in the
Beautiful
studio today.
blend, huh? Beautiful.
Yeah, Phil Mattson, he knows what he's talking about.
Yes, he does. He sure does.
You
And
work
I'm,
a long
I'm sitting
time.
here listening to this lovely young lady sing so
Yeah.
beautifully, and with both songs that I love both those songs. Hey,
thank
but I love Hey There. Rosie
Yeah.
Clooney, #1 hit,
Yeah.
and of course Sammy Davis did a record. of that
Did a
too.
pretty good recording of that.
Very good
Very
recording.
good
Yes.
recording.